Welcome to Blue Sky's first Launchcast, where we talk with Tom Holm of the Energy Defense Council and the launch of the Tactical Electric Vehicle Conference in June of 2024. If you have a product or service that you'd like to launch on Blue Sky, just contact me at www.parabolic-strategy.com or drop me an email at richard@parabolic-strategy.com. Enjoy the show. I cannot recall a time in my life where things have been so polarized.
Yeah.
It's unreal. It's like the fabric of society is just coming unraveled like an old sweater. It's like we're all condemned by each other for the freedom that we have.
I think I get what you're saying. It's almost like, freedom isn't, you can't yell fire in a theater. There's certain protocols, etiquettes, politenesses that come along with freedom. There's certain empathy, that should come along with freedom. And we've become unempathetic. And it's a sad time, and especially frightening now that I have a grandson. It's like, what are you going to face? Hopefully the cycle will spin back. Hopefully the pendulum will swing back, but right now I've never seen anything like this. And it goes right back to what I'm saying, to thine own self be true. I got to be true to what I do. What I do is, I'm agnostic when it comes to products and technologies. Is whatever seems to be advancing us. And this is probably a good point to bring up in the chat. Is I've always considered myself kind of an environmentalist, kind of a conservationist. But this is a pragmatic way for us to all get what we want. If we can switch over to clean energy, I get what I want. And I'm doing it by approaching the world's largest fleet of vehicles, vessels, and aircraft. And I loved your response yesterday, by the way, when the guy said switching to EVs is just stupid. I mean, it was kind of a blunt point, and your response was brilliant. There's no thermal signature. There's silence. There's torque. Forget about the politics.
Exactly.
Think about the practical benefit of it. And that's something I'll probably bring up as well.
Well, and that's part of the challenge as the Department of Defense looks at electrified vehicles. Was the catalyst an executive order? Was the catalyst this Army climate strategy from 2022? Yeah, definitely. Those are provocations to bring EV technology into the space, but the grand realization is that that prompted the greater research by the DoD into the technology.
Right.
And now it's become revealed, like you said, the benefits, the practical benefits, a reduction of the fuel's logistics tail, which is enormous. More manpower and money from the DoD budget goes into simply getting fuel from point A to point Z. And frankly, in the days of the convoys, in the early days of the Operation Iraqi Freedom, more service members died on those convoys just simply to transport the JP-8 to the tactical edge of the battlefield. So if you can reduce that fuel logistics, you're going to save lives. That's pretty compelling case for converting to a different kind of energy strategy. But then, like you say, thermal reduction, thermal signature reduction, noise reduction, so you can do silent idle for intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance operations. One of my favorite emerging potentials of EV technology is what I call amphibious loitering. And it's something I've played with, the concept in past opportunities, where imagine if you have an IP67 rated electrical vehicle system. So IP67 means dust and water ingress. It's waterproof up to a certain point. Imagine parking that electric vehicle, parking such as dropping it out of an airplane and having it hit the water and drop to the bottom and wait for your other teams to catch up to it, hop in it, and drive it out of the water onto the beach. Wow. Think about the possibilities there.
Silently.
Yeah. Do it silently.
Yeah.
So you don't just have your frogmen swimming up in scuba gear and, hopping onto the beach. They're getting into a secured, protected vehicle and driving that thing out of the water, guns ablazing. It's an amazing opportunity. So to that commenter, oh, this is stupid and absurd, it's just wokeism. Okay, well, I get it.
Yeah.
And perhaps, quote unquote, wokeism started the conversation. What's important is where the conversation is today. And where it is today is that, oh my God, there's actual benefit to this stuff. So good segue to your latest adventure with the Energy Defense Council and the emergence of this tactical EV conference. And I'd love to hear, what prompted that, how you got kind of dragged into this, and where you see this thing going.
Well, my background has been working in several different arenas. One has been working with the SEMA organization and building custom vehicles for primarily General Motors. But once Ford got a hold of my designs and started seeing what we were doing at SEMA, they contracted me as well, as did Mitsubishi, Mercedes-Benz, Kia, and others. I built a reputation early on with General Motors. I was hosting a television show years ago called Adventure Highway with Tom Holm. And I was at an event.
Sorry to interrupt. I just watched a clip of that, by the way. And it was this kind of montage it was 2-minute montage of Tom Holm, Tom Holm centric little.
Okay. I don't know what you're talking about, but okay.
Yeah, I'll send you it's on Vimeo, but it's
Okay.
it's a spotlight of you and like some of your highlights talking in Adventure Highway. But anyway, I'll send it to you. You can see it.
Well, it was an amazing, opportunity. The premise was that I would drive a diesel motorhome to different events and then take part in the sport that was being highlighted. So I drove up to Half Moon Bay and I actually got to surf with, guys like Jay Moriarty and Jeff Clark and, these legends of surfing. It was phenomenal. I got to, go rock climbing with Tommy Caldwell and, other world-class athletes everywhere I went. Got to go motorcycle racing with, top drivers. And at one of those events, a guy named Bob Kern from General Motors walked up to me and he was angry. Why are you driving a motorhome and Mitsubishi vehicles to these different events in America? Why aren't you driving a GM vehicle? And I said, well, let's talk. And so they came back with a package. And part of his package was that they would sponsor me and they'd give me 4 SUVs a year or pickups of my choice, but I would have to do some type of customization on the TV show, and then I'd have to take them to SEMA. And the way he did that, the way he approached us was, you've been to SEMA, right? You know how to customize vehicles, right? I didn't know how to match a wheel to a tire at that time. All I heard was, you're going to give me, free vehicles and money. Oh yeah, I can do that. I can customize it. SEMA, of course, I never heard of SEMA. This was 20 some years ago. And so we got the vehicles. I customized them a little bit on the show. And then we took them to SEMA, and the very first vehicle I customized along with 100 of my friends. How do we match that wheel to the tire? What are amp power steps? What's a cold air intake? Who cares about Borla exhaust? What does it do? And everyone would tell me. And so we built a couple of vehicles. We won a bunch of awards right out of the gate. SEMA gave us a prime spot. From then on, we were sponsored by SEMA. And then I went back to GM and I said, I'll continue to do this, but our vehicles have to have some type of eco slant to them. I'm going to use renewable. Everything I get, I want to be made from renewable materials, renewable, tires, renewable, aluminum in my exhaust system, everything. Went to Cat Skin, who makes leather seat covers, really premium seat covers, developed alternatives where we were using renewable materials. And that brought me to renewable fuels. And so really did a lot of research at the time, and really started, and because we were running diesel, really focused on biodiesels. And I was really intrigued by algae-derived biofuels. Algae has these incredible qualities where it can grow quite quickly, and as it grows, it's producing oil. It's 80% oil. You can squeeze it, get the oil, keep the protein, the body part of it. It's an organism, not a plant, which people don't know. And that oil could be used as a very efficient fuel. The process of going through the filtration system as the algae is growing, it's eating waste products and emitting clean air. And also, if it's being used to filter water, another byproduct is clean water. So this was really intriguing to me. So much so, I went back to grad school, Scripps Institution of Oceanography, to study algae. And I got my master's degree from that university, and that was one of the topics I studied. And so we ran all these vehicles, and I thought, you know what? Let's approach the most what's perceived as the biggest fuel gas guzzler out there. Let's go and take a Hummer. And so I called Bob Kern at GM. I said, Bob, I want my vehicles this year to be all Hummers. I want, H2 pickup, H2 SUV, and we're going to run them on biodiesel. And he tells me, well, they're not diesel. And my answer was, not yet. And so we got them, we converted them to diesel, got them up to 1,000 horsepower. We had a toggle switch on our dashboard where we can go from 350 horsepower and 24 miles per gallon up to 1,000 horsepower and then down to like 8 miles per gallon on algae-based biofuel. And so that caught the attention of worldwide press, made a bunch of magazine covers, got a bunch of awards at SEMA, got a call from the Pentagon. Mr. Holm, we see what you're doing with these biofuels. Can you stop by on your next national tour promoting these fuels? Yes, I can. So I stopped at the Pentagon and endeared myself with the Chief of Navy Operations at the time, Ray Mabus, and his team in the Obama administration, and we were asked to do a national tour promoting the Navy's conservation successes. And so we did that with the Blue Angels for a year. We followed the Blue Angels, promoted renewable fuels. Well, biofuels didn't catch on as I had thought it might, but being energy agnostic, I really try to position myself with the most efficient fuel system that can be scaled, and the momentum was and continues to be electric vehicles. And so we started doing customizing hybrids for GM, some of the early electric vehicles, and that gave me a really strong background with renewable energy, the auto industry, and now I've got an in with the Chief of Navy Operations. I've got an in with the Pentagon. And so as I started really trying to focus on trying to bring people together, the TV show is long gone. I'm trying to figure out what is the best way to really bring people together. And we had a conference a couple years back called the ZE Summit, Zero Emission Summit. At that event, we had Rear Admiral Brad Rosen, the commander of Navy Region Southwest, and Brigadier General Woodworth, who's the commander of Marine Installation West. They both spoke at my event. Both of them approached me afterwards. I'm getting approached by, a CG and a Rear Admiral coming right at me. Tom, this event is great. Zero emission is great. It's too generic for us. We need something. We're being mandated, by our boss, the president, to do something with electric vehicles. And can you help us do that? Can we have an event that brings us all together? And I said, well, what about AUSA? What about, these other tremendous events that are going on right now? And they said, there's nothing clearly focused on EVs. And I said, well, how about a tactical EV expo? Bam. Yes, let's do that. And so within a month of this concept brewing, I get a call from Army Futures Command, Defense Innovation Unit, TEVCON, all the AFWorks, Navy Tech Bridge program. I'm saying that wrong.
Naval X. Okay.
Naval X Bridge. I get a call from all of these different groups saying, "Can we speak? Can we present at your event? Who's going to be at your event?" And I mentioned the other groups. We have to be there. We want a big presence there. And so we launched TEVX, is what we called it, the inaugural year, the Tactical EV Expo. And it was meant to be a car show. It was meant to be, really cool, dune buggies and motorcycles and off-road vehicles that were electric. But with all of these different DoD groups becoming a part of it and wanting to speak, it clearly became top-heavy with really high-level facilitators from the DoD that came. I remember when I talked to Doug French from the Defense Innovation Unit. Doug said, "I'm coming to recruit partners. I'm coming to your event to recruit partners. I don't care if they've got ideas written on napkins or if it's Tesla. I want to sign them up. We need that technology for the Department of Defense. We are behind in technology with some of our other countries, and we need to pick up the pace here in America. We need manufacturing here in America. We're coming to recruit." I'm like, wow, this has really grown into something very quickly and very necessary and very important. And so the calls went out to the innovators that could actually help meet the needs of the DoD. And so, right back to my auto industry, General Motors, call GM. GM Defense jumps on board almost immediately. And Brent Daly from GM Defense signs up as one of our speakers. Well, Brent's a retired colonel. And so I thought, what better keynote speaker, someone that has the background with the military and as a military facilitator. He's done some extraordinary things with advancing renewable energy and also energy security, on the different installations that he ran. Well, now he's at GM Defense. Now he understands that side of the fence. He understands what manufacturers need to do in order to get these products into the pipeline for the DoD. And so what better person to make our keynote speaker? So Brent Daly agreed. What an honor to have a man of his background and caliber to be our keynote speaker. So he came, and we had others, fall in line from Army Futures Command, from DIU, from DevCom, from other groups, all jump on. And you saw yourself, Richard, the level of talent, the level of the caliber of men and speakers that were at our event was just really incredible. And so that's now, now I'm getting calls from their bosses. We want to be the speakers this year. We want to be at your event. We want to display more technologies. Getting calls from the Pentagon. I was just there last week. I was in DC, made a stop at the Pentagon. They want this event to be ramped up, and that's what we're doing. And so I'm reaching out to people like yourself, your viewers. We've got amazing companies like Danner and Volcon and Polaris and GM Defense, and I should never name companies because you always forget some. We got Madbach and Christini and Uprise, small companies. We've got everything from we got GM Defense coming, and by the way, book your space early because GM Defense is saying they want to dominate inside, outside, back, and front. I love that. But there's companies that we want to make sure that we include, and really you were instrumental in stating the obvious to me. We need to also make this available to the napkin guys. We need to make it available to companies that have these extraordinary ideas that need startup money, that need scale up manufacturing money. And so companies like Uprise Energy, they've got this portable, incredible windmill system that it generates an incredible amount of energy and also stores it. Companies like Primo Energy, similar type of technology, and Moxium, and we also want to get guys like Amazon involved in this because we want to show not just the vehicle to get the personnel and the technologies to the battlefield or to forward theaters, but the equipment that could be placed on them so that it becomes really usable once we get into those situations. And the term tactical EV is now even though our focus is becoming tighter, the term is, I want people to understand a tactical vehicle is definitely a personnel carrier in a combat area. It's definitely a forward vehicle in intense situations, but it's also a delivery vehicle on Camp Pendleton. It's a motorcycle, in combat, but also at, Miramar or Oceana or any of the other installations throughout America. DIU's directive right now is installation security. They want secure energy, which means microgrids, which means electric three-wheeled Arcimoto vehicles or little pickup trucks. Those are tactical vehicles because they're delivering messages from point A to point Z, as you say. It's getting that message across. And Brigadier General Woodworth said something one time which really resonated with me when DIU was differentiating between installation security and expeditionary energy or exportable energy in the combat zone. He pointed out this is a combat zone. Camp Pendleton at any moment could be the front line of defense, as can every other military installation in America. So our responsibility grows, not just to provide the cool, vehicle, Polaris, Volcon vehicles that can get, the guns and the men into position, but also make sure that we've got resilient charging stations and infrastructure and microgrids and energy generation, energy storage, all of that on the installations that can be mobilized if they need to, into forward areas. But it's a balance of both. And I love the way it was articulated by Brigadier General Woodworth. Installations can become, the front lines. And so we need to make sure that they're secure.
Spot on. And to take a page out of the book from another group of attendees at the last conference, Brandon Newell, Steve Harvey of
Yeah.
DCI Next, and the Painted Wolf, Norm Reeder. Um, their approach is very similar to what you're I think hinting at. They have this systems design approach for their services, and they look at the bigger picture of what introducing an electric vehicle into the space looks like. And to your point, it's not just the vehicle itself; it's all of the bolt-on accessories. It's
Right.
your ISR, your intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance equipment. It's your charging, but also um, from the perspective of the operational landscape, it's the manufacturing piece. It's the logistics piece because shipping an EV is not like shipping a diesel truck. And it's a revamp of safety culture in terms of everything, the certifications, the regulations, um, everything about an electric vehicle and the DoD electrifying changes their entire picture. And so I think I believe this TEVCON is a great opportunity for all of those ancillary services that feed into what a new type of vehicle might entail. They're all welcome there, either to be a sponsor or to just come and walk the booths and
I,
be a general attendee.
I love that you brought up DCI Next, the Painted Wolf group. Brandon Newell was one of the founders of the Naval X Tech Bridge in San Diego, in Camp Pendleton, and Steve Harvey was his successor. And so those guys are legit. And what they're brilliant at recognizing is how to connect the dots. Okay, you've got an idea over here. How can that be applied, in a practical way for the DoD, and not just DoD? Let me point this out too. We're also working with first responders, emergency responder. I like to say emergency responders. So FEMA, here in California, the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. These are guys that'll benefit from this type of technology as well, in fighting fires and bringing, emergency relief to these areas. And, Brandon Newell, Steve Harvey, and the whole group at the Painted Wolf and DCI Next, they get the big picture, but they can look at the dots and connect them. This battery would be great with this system. And by the way, based on our experience as military facilitators, we know how to get that into the military system. And so, we worked with those guys early on with TEVX. They reached out, and I think they're a brilliant group of men. I'm honored to be, even working with them. But, they came in and said, look, we understand this, from the logistical point of view and how to apply it. And we see all of these great companies that are out there, these great technologies. Let's help them get that into the military, into the DoD system. And not just in combat zones, but what are there? Something like 600 military installations in America. I think the real number is somewhat classified, but they understand that we can use military installations like Camp Pendleton as a staging ground, as they did with the Ethor project, where they brought together different innovators, and they had that they had the vehicle, and then they had the bolt-on equipment, and then they showed application all on a military installation. And that attracted a lot of facilitators to come in. And now all of those manufacturers and innovators are on the radar of the military facilitators. That's a model that we want to replicate. And so let me take a step back. I said that TEVX was starting off as a car show, right? And it was supposed to be kind of like an EV car show, going back to my roots with SEMA, and some of the other car shows I've worked. But but it became something else right in front of our eyes. We saw, all of these top senior level military leaders come to this event looking for something. They're being told, by the commander in chief, you guys, your colonels, your admirals, your generals, I'm telling you, you need to go out and find ways to electrify our fleet. Well, those great men, have trained themselves to protect us. And that's their job. I want them to do their job. It's up to us to do our job. Our job is to help them listen to their orders. They're being told, go get EVs. Let's help them do their job, because I don't want them spending, all of their time thinking about how to electrify a Hummer. That's our job. We'll do that and we'll present it to you. And so that's what, they came to TEVX to try to find those technologies, and they found some. And the magic of that show was they found the innovations, but they also found guys like the Painted Wolf, DCI Next, that could help bridge that gap. And that's what the magic of TEVX was. The reason that it converted over to TEVCON is because it became more of a conference. We were all discussing things. There were deals that were being made and discussed, and innovations that were being refined so that they could be placed into the DoD system. And so as we build this thing of ours, this tactical EV expo conference, it's becoming more and more of a place, I'm finding, where people want to get together, in breakout sessions, in open discussions, where these innovations can be advanced to the point that they could be used in practical ways. And so that's what brought about, the change into TEVCON. And then our next, at the show, the recurring statement was, this is great. We love being in San Diego on this beautiful pier, surrounded by water, having these great discussions, but we want to ride motorcycles in the dirt. We want to have, these tactical EVs put to the test. We want jumps and loops and dirt. And so we're evolving this to go back to these national tours that I used to do. That's how we were discovered by the Pentagon in the first place. It's kind of coming full circle. So we're going to do the Energy Defense Tour, and that tour, while we're at TEVCON in San Diego, looking at all these different technologies, we're going to say, look, that's something that needs to be tested in the field. Will you please come with us to Oceana? Where SEAL Team 6 is. Let SEAL Team 6 fiddle with your stuff. Let's see if it stands up to the test. Let's take it out to Camp Pendleton. Let's take it to the Yuma Proving Grounds. And there's these different testing places throughout the country, with different branches having different arenas for that. So we'll take it to AFWorks for them to test. We'll take it to Army Futures Command for them to test. We'll take it to DEFCON for them to test. We'll get it out in the field, and so that'll be an extension of the tactical EV conference. We'll take it out on tour, and so these products can be tested. One of the recurring statements, every military guy that got up on stage at our inaugural event, every single one of them said, give it to a Marine, they'll break it.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. All right.
Yeah.
This sorts the pretenders from the performers. And so as we start getting this stuff out into the field, I certainly don't want to show up at Oceana, hand a device or put a SEAL Team 6 member in a vehicle that's not going to work. That word is going to get out quick. So we want to make sure that everything that we get out into the field, is tested and is going to at least stand the test of some rigors.
And here's the deal. Even if a company out there had what they would consider a vehicle or an application or something associated with an electric vehicle that is ready to deploy, they're incorrect. It has to be tested. It has to be broken. It has to be modified. It has to go through all kinds of certain measures and protocols to be a viable product. And for those who are unfamiliar with the DoD space, let me say this: there's never been a better time than today to enter that market, because, as you're saying, the DoD and their leadership is out there begging for small business, for innovative commercial businesses to start contracting with them. And while there's a bit of a controversy on how to go under contract because the mechanics really aren't there currently to um, help make that contracting chain super efficient. It's frankly because the demand is so high and the supply is so high that they just can't keep up and they can't organize themselves internally. But that'll get fixed. The point is, for any vehicle manufacturers out there, for any integrators, and we're talking, it could be telematics, it could be sensoring, it could be surveillance, um, anything that might be attached to that vehicle in some way, shape, or form, be it a tire, be it the charging station, be it some kind of coating that helps protect from corrosive environments, anything like that that could be applied to vehicle technology is welcome to this conversation. And if they aren't aware how to contract with the DoD, then the TEVCON is the perfect opportunity for them to come find out. And they'll have those candid conversations. And that was one thing I found at the last one, was it was a very intimate environment. To your point, it became kind of a conference. And that's because you had some really heavy hitters there from the right sources on the government side, and you had some really heavy hitters in the primes. So your Brant Daly's, like you said, your Ben Richardsons
Yeah.
from Our Next Energy.
Mhm.
And these are players that have been on the defense side, but now they're on the commercial side, and so they get kind of um, how to navigate both environments. Also, the DoD, in contracting with innovative businesses, they require that their dual use technologies. What that
Mhm.
means is they have to be commercially viable,
Mhm.
because it's not the DoD's responsibility to help scale your business and keep your doors open. Because we all know it's a very long sales cycle. And once you get a contract, it can be lucrative for several years, but it may take several years to get there. And so, there's concern that if your only market is the government and you're not currently doing business with the government, then you should go try to do business commercially first, because that will keep your cash flows relevant and you'll escape what they call the valley of death. And so, for commercial companies out there, let's talk electric bicycles, electric motorcycles, electric scooters, electric four-wheelers, ATVs, UTVs, large trucks, small trucks, mobile charging stations, static charging stations, and any and all are welcome. Even if today you're only a commercial provider, then here's a great opportunity to come stick your toes in the water, have the conversations. And to your other point about, I call it the rolling road show, right? Having the opportunity to be a part of these live demonstrations and putting the technology in the hands of the operators that need to try to break them, that is an invaluable opportunity for any commercial provider out there. Because even though you think it's ready, it's not. And the whole point is you want them to go break it, because once they go and break it, they're going to give you that feedback on how to fix it. And it's going to inform them on the inside how to build a requirement for a program of record that you've kind of been a part of. And once that program of record gets to the point of RFIs and engaging industry to start asking the bigger questions on how to take this concept and scale it to production. You as that commercial provider, having been there and having gained the feedback and the real use case feedback, you're going to be a part of that larger conversation down the road. Your only responsibility right now is to just stay in business commercially, keep doing what you're doing, and then pivot off a side project to go build up your government relevancy, and then be a part of that conversation and slowly prototype your way into scale. And so the opportunities there. Tom, how can people who are interested attend the show? How can they just get involved in one way, shape, or another?
We started off fairly grassroots last year, and this was something that was meant to be a regional event that grew very quickly. This year we're revamping to be on a world scale. We're redoing the website will be relaunched the first of the year. In the meantime, anyone can reach out to me. This is meant to be a collaboration, not just one. And by the way, we're a nonprofit foundation. We're not a nonprofit 501c3. We did that so that we could remain, open to all technologies and, not have any perception of, being out for big profit for this. We're not. You and I talked about the personal reasons why I'm doing this, and they're deep. There's a real reason for me to be doing this. And so my point is, this is a collaboration. My email address is tomholm@energydefense.org. Anybody is welcome to email me. And I welcome any input that can go in towards the refinement and the scaling up of this event. So please, have your listeners reach out to me at any time. And then we will have our website will relaunch the first of the year. If people are interested in exhibiting, I would recommend, signing up quickly. That's not a sales pitch. That's just good, friendly advice, because we are getting many of the bigger companies want to come in, with their products. You made a good point, have more 10 by 10 booths at our space, in our space for some of the smaller companies. We're going to make that happen. And so it's open to anyone that has true innovation. If you're coming to this event with something that's not ready, that you're trying to, if there's any hint of BS in what you're trying to present, you're going to be found out very quickly. Yep. Come with serious innovations. We'll make the space for you, and reach out to me now, and you can go to the website a little bit later on, probably the first of the year.
Yeah. Perfect. Change of subject.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You went back to school at Scripps.
Yes.
I noticed that marine archaeology was that the subject? You have a master's in, I saw, renewable energy and marine archaeology. Is that the case?
First off, it's Scripps Institution of Oceanography. The term Scripps is a family name and applied towards, many different wonderful institutions, primarily in the San Diego area. So Scripps Institution of Oceanography. I went in with, keen focus on algae-based biofuels. Really wanted to understand the biology of algae. I'm laughing because who does that? I was 50 years old when I went back to graduate school at the foremost university, or arguably the foremost in the world. And I got I cannot believe I got accepted. What an honor. So I did study the marine biodiversity. That's what my master's degree is. But as I was doing that, I've done some work in the past with tribal communities as a liaison with them and the federal government. So this goes back even further, but I'll start with the liaison. I wrote a book that approached archaeology from an indigenous perspective. I went into archaeology. I went into, what I think I've mentioned this to you before, what I call the archaeological regime. There's an established group of academics that have just owned that space. And in my view, there was a lot of, repetition between what was said 50 years ago and what is said now, without any innovation and without any inclusion of indigenous peoples. How can you study people without talking to the people? They're right. They're here. And so I remember asking one of my professors, hey, would you mind if I reached out to the Luiseno and the Kumeyaay tribes and the Weneno and, other tribes of something, the Chumash? Oh, don't involve them. They're going to, they'll get in our way. They'll make it more difficult for us to dig. And I'm like, well, aren't there laws protecting those sites, and shouldn't we be involving? Yeah, but if you involve them, they're going to shut us down. Well, then let this play out the way that it should. I'm going to go, if I'm studying the Kumeyaay, I'm going to go talk to the Kumeyaay. And if I'm studying the Luiseno, I'm going to go talk to Luiseno. Well, I went to the Luiseno first. And as I was there, I was showing them pictures of a recent discovery. And if you know the book Island of the Blue Dolphins, it's a very famous book, and it really is a book of empowerment for young women. So more women will remember this book as being instrumental in their lives. And there was a movie about it as well. Well, there was a discovery that was connected to that book. The heroine of this book, her name is Karana, and these archaeologists found these two, talk about cliche, they found these two treasure chests filled with artifacts that could be associated with that young woman who's called Karana in the book. I don't use that name because it's not an indigenous name. And so I took photos of those artifacts to a group that had been identified as being associated to that island. And the elders were laughing. They were just laughing. The archaeologists call that a hairpin. We have a different name for it. And it's not a hairpin. We went down this list of 111 items. Each one of those 111 items were identified as something else by the indigenous people. And so as a result of me doing these studies, several tribes asked me to represent them in discussions with the U.S. government, because there were very heated discussions. My background, I was born on a military base. I grew up on military bases. I worked for the DOD. My father was 20 years Navy, 20 years DOD. My son's involved with federal law enforcement. So I have that DNA, but I also now have a track record with indigenous people to approach things from their perspective. So we were able to negotiate some really good mitigation while the border wall was being built under the Trump administration. So I didn't take sides politically. I just simply said, look, here's the indigenous perspective. How can we be considerate towards that as this wall was built? And it turned out to be a huge success for both sides. The wall wasn't slowed down, but in some cases, there were considerations made for cultural sites, so that was a big win. And so it turned out to be a big win, for both sides, and it's ongoing. Some people say the best negotiations, you've negotiated well, where neither side is happy. I kind of agree with that a little bit. No one's ever going to be completely happy, but it enabled progress to continue. And it further endeared me with some of the people in the federal government. And so that has, again, helped us now, as we're working on TEVCON, now we're in discussions with Border Patrol, Department of Homeland Security. Those guys need to be coming to TEVCON as well, because they're on tribal lands. And if we could be running clean vehicles, electric vehicles in these sensitive areas and not dumping, not having to bring out petroleum, not having accidental oil dumps and things like that, while, not emitting any emissions. That's also a big win. So all of this kind of came together with TEVCON, all the history. I went through a PhD program in archaeology and kind of pioneered the approach of archaeology from an indigenous perspective. And the results have been really heartwarming. The military has allowed and has assisted in the repatriation of over 10,000 ancestors. The tribal communities don't call them human remains. They call those ancestors. And those ancestors have been able to be reburied, over 10,000 of them, on military installations through this amazing set of discussions, brought forth, from some of the work I've done. So I'm very, very proud of that.
Well, what a beautiful message that is to bring us full circle in this entire conversation, where we started talking about the polarization of our current society.
Yeah.
Right. And the message being that all it took was an open and transparent conversation and setting the correct expectations.
Richard, this is the beauty of you. You see these things, and you're spot on correct. There's been environmentalists, fighting military, for so long, but there's so many common areas as well. Places where these human repatriations are taking place. They're part of the Channel Islands here in California. Well, if the U.S. Navy didn't own San Nicolas Island and didn't control it, it would likely be overrun with tourism and other, possibly other industry, overfishing, because those areas are protected now. So in fact, the military becomes a de facto provider of military protected areas. And so on San Nicolas Island, human remains are being repaid. I'm going to use the indigenous term. Ancestors are being repatriated. Black abalone, considered extinct. It's the only place in the world where they're regrowing and the populations are growing. Elephant seals, which were once designated as extinct. Now there are 220,000 of them going to that island every year to create more elephant seals. They would be extinct without these military de facto marine protected areas. And that includes places like Camp Pendleton, San Clemente Island, where Navy SEALs train there. What an interesting dichotomy, where you've got Navy SEALs training, but elephant seals reproducing and regenerating their population. So, your point is that, through discussion, through, these type of meetings like TEVCON, we can have a convergence. We can have a joining of forces, and great things can come about from that. And that has proven itself through the first event that we had. And I think that's why there's so much magic and so much positive energy, pardon the pun, going forward, with TEVCON and having this thing grow, because it's bringing people together and things are getting done.
Well, just given the immediate interest following the last one, the immediate interest that you gained, I can see you outgrowing this venue in the next year or two. And it's a beautiful venue, by the way.
It is.
It is gorgeous. But I just, the offering is too compelling out there, and it's just, you're going to have more square footage. But this year, this next event in June, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be elbow to elbow. It's going to be stuffed to the gills with talent, with professionals from both sides of the opportunity zone. And I really encourage people to come out.
Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate that. And I'm glad that you've got the vision to see that.
Yeah. So, well, Tom, it's been a great conversation. As always.
Our conversations are always great, Richard. I really appreciate, all the time I get with you. You're thought provoking, you're considerate. You make some really great points. And every time I talk to you, I learn something.
Well, likewise, sir. I appreciate you. And, oh, congratulations, by the way. You mentioned your son is in federal law enforcement, and recently something happened at Quantico. What was that?
Well, I'm really not supposed to talk about that.
Oh, sorry.
Well, but let's we can connect some dots. My son's involved in law enforcement. There was a graduation that took place at Quantico. Prior to that, though, I became a grandfather, and my son had a beautiful son as well, who stayed with us while my son was at academy. It's really, isn't that what this is all about, right? Even at the graduation ceremony, I can't give too many details out, but even at the graduation ceremony, the key speaker, mentioned as my family was holding our new grandson, the director of this agency said, look, if the kids start crying, if the babies start crying, stay where you're at, stay in your seat. That's music to our ears. This is what we fight for. And I thought that was just they got a rousing, applause with that. And I was partaking in that. It really is what it's about. You and I talked earlier about this being a somewhat divisive time. We have to fight for our children, our grandchildren. And that's not just a cliche with me. It's something that's what this is about. If I can help facilitate the world's largest fleet of vehicles, vessels, aircraft, unmanned, underwater, that's what this event is about. It's not just wheeled vehicles. I want submarines tied to the side of that, the pier that we're on. I want electric or hybrid or hydrogen ships, parked on the sides of this event. I want EVs. I want EV tolls to be landing on the end of that pier, all electric. If we can help influence that, that's what you and I are supposed to be doing, right? If we can help influence that, we're influencing the largest fleet and the most critical fleet in the world. And we're doing that, and I know you're a soulful guy. We're doing this not just for ourselves, not just for personal gains. Dear Lord, right. We could be doing other things, but it's for that, the grandson that I hold and, the subsequent generations.
Yeah, it's precisely. It's the enablement of the warfighter to protect our children, our loved ones. And to do so, they have to be enabled with the right tools and technology, which we've fallen so far behind. And now we face multiple threats out there from all corners of the globe, and it's concerning. It's really concerning.
It is.
We need innovators to help step into this environment with the Department of Defense, help manufacture, help from the perspective of logistics, help from the perspective of even the most minute of things. Are you good at training people? Well, then come be a trainer and provide a service of training on these new technologies to the service members. There's so many different ways to contribute and to be part of this greater cause. And without that, we're going to continue to fall behind. We're going to continue to fail at recruiting. So I think there's something to be said here about technology and recruiting, innovation and recruiting, how to get people to just enlist so that we have more warm bodies to use these tools.
I don't mean to interrupt. This is I am interrupting because you bring up such a great point. just this morning, I got an email from one of the directors, one of the program managers for TEVCON STEM outreach, and going right back to Scripps Institution of Oceanography at UCSD. It's on a massive campus, and all the other universities throughout the country. We're inviting, students to come to these events. We want their technologies. We want to nurture their, we want to inspire them with what's there and be inspired, by their ideas and their enthusiasm. So, outreach, STEM outreach, academia, involving the students is a big, big part of this. We'll likely be busing in students from high schools, in the area. We'll likely be busing, bringing people in from, being inclusive, bringing, people in from, I always say that military installations are autonomous communities. So are Indian reservations, and they can help each other, and they are beginning to work more and more closely together. We'll be bringing people in from tribal communities, from universities, from high schools, so that we have great representation, throughout, and we can inspire them and they can inspire us.
Yeah.
This isn't going to be just a big commercial event for, for some of the big companies. We certainly want them there because their innovations are tremendous.
And that's the thing, is the primes always have the bullhorn and the optics. This is, yes. Do we want the big primes there? Absolutely. Do we want them monopolizing and taking every square foot possible? Absolutely not.
You are 1,000% correct. What was beautiful at our first event, the inaugural event, was Brant Daly from GM Defense, the biggest fish in the pond, right? Yeah. He's swimming around. He stayed for the entire event, from before it opened till after it closed. And he met with every single one of the exhibitors. And it wasn't about competition. It was about cooperation. How do we work with one to get better battery systems? How do we work with Hypercraft, to maybe, look at different suspension systems or, prolonged battery life? Brant met with every single one of the groups, and partnerships were made. You saw that. You pointed something out to me that I thought was wonderful. Arcimoto met with, was it with Captain Ben Cohen and the group from DCI Next? So a week after our event, Arcimoto vehicles were being driven around at the Miramar Air Show as a result of cooperation at TEVX. So, that's what it's all about. And, they had outreach at that event as well. So there was university involvement. And so we want to keep that momentum going.
Well, and that's a good point too. From the message I got from Brant was, to your point, we're not here to compete. We're here to collaborate. We want partners. Mm-hmm. And for those who are unfamiliar on how a lot of this works with the DoD, your big contracts are going to go through a prime contractor anyway, like the big fish. If you've never done business, that's how the money flows. They go through the trusted agent, mm-hmm. so to speak. And it's someone who's done business with the government for decades, like these big primes. And so the primes are amazing partners. At least there are opportunities to form amazing partnerships with the primes, should I say. And so for those unfamiliar, this is just one more avenue to get into that conversation, is to meet some of these big players like the Brant Dalys of the world.
Yeah, and that was just another reason to call this TEVCON conference. Mm-hmm. These guys were conferring with each other, and I got to tell you, it was certainly rewarding walking through that exhibit hall and hearing, GM talking to Hypercraft, and hearing Arcimoto talking to the Painted Wolf, and Christini, talking, with Loop Charging, and the other people there. It was Someone asked me how many people came to the event. I said, man, you're asking the wrong question. Who came to the event, and what was the result of the event? The result was collaborations that you just cannot make, at the big shows. If you go, I'm not going to, I don't want to compete with the other shows. They're wonderful and they're necessary, but ours was special because of that intimacy and the ability for everyone to be able to connect with everyone else at the event with everyone being able to meet the big fish and the small fish, and them all, getting together on that exhibit floor was really rewarding for me.
Perfect.
And for them too, I understand, there's been some great deals made as a result.
For those who don't know, if they haven't picked up on it yet, Tom has launched TEVCON as of today, and we are dedicating this show to talk about TEVCON. I've been very happy to do so. Very excited to see what happens. What are the dates again specifically?
June 4th through 6th, 2024 at San Diego's Broadway Street Pier. We're actually out on a pier in the shadow of the USS Midway and right across the street from Navy Region Southwest offices.
Beautiful. Well, Tom, I'm sure we'll tag the appropriate people in this posting. Congratulations again. I'm happy to have been invited to be a part of this and to help get this thing launched. It's very exciting. And to your point earlier, this is about the greater good. This is a forum for collaboration and to help bridge that gap of innovation where it's needed, and to open that conversation, to bring two very polarized sides together over this subject matter. So thank you for including me, and please let me know how I can help, and I'm sure we'll chime back in here in a few weeks or a couple months and see.
Richard, thank you so much. I mean, thank you for seeing the vision and for helping get the word out about this important event.
Sure. Absolutely, man.
All right.
Okay, again, how can people contact you again?
Tom Holm at energydefense.org. Email me directly, Tom Holm, TOMHOLM at energydefense.org. And we'll be posting the website, which will simply be TEVCON.com, probably January 1st.
Perfect. All right. Any parting words?
Oh, just thank you, so much. I think you nailed it. This is all about collaboration, bringing the right people together, making it easier for us to help the largest fleet in the world transition to clean energy.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.